Football has become America's game.
It dominates people's weekends.
It's colorful, it's pageantry, it's tough, it represents the American spirit in a lot of ways.
But there were growing pains, scandals, and casualties.
Today, football is the most popular spectator sport in this country. It wasn't when it began.
Nobody at that time knew what the NFL was going to do and whether guys could even afford to play or they had to keep their day job.
There was a group of young men in Boston that kind of invented a new game to play.
A game for territory. It was a game that taught strategic skills.
A lot of people lost teeth, broken noses.
Fights, the rules were kind of loose.
People got stomped and killed, and it was a brutal, brutal kind of game.
You have to start with Walter Camp, making rules that would change the sport forever, as a junior in college.
Players came to Ohio to play for the Ohio teams.
A dynamite running back, probably the fastest player in the league at the time, but he was a black player.
They would, try to rough him up after the play and such because of his race.
They started dubbing him the Black Cyclone because he would just rip through the defensive lines.
Players jumped all over the place. In fact, one season, supposedly, Newt Rockne played for 5 different teams under 5 different names while he was coaching at Notre Dame. It was Wild West. It was crazy. And it got crazier and crazier and crazier.
Most of the money was being exchanged during the game in the stands.
Neighbors saying, well, I'll bet you the Tanks, I'll bet you the Spartans.
When they say it's not about the money, it's about the money.
There was 18 deaths, over 150 injuries, and that grabbed the attention of Teddy Roosevelt.
He was going to ban football. That's how serious this was.
In 1906, Canton and Massillon had a scandal that almost killed the pro game.
It's become one of the most rancorous rivalries in the history of sports.
And then, to quote it, all hell broke loose.
Those stars elevated the sport.
You don't have a story if you don't have Jim Thorpe. He's the prime mover.
People wanted just to see him. The game was secondary to him. He was larger than the game.
He was kind of like a specimen. He was like a Greek god.
Escalating salaries, ringers, grifters. The sport was in danger of becoming not worthy of being professional.
It needed more stability and leadership.
The Green Bay Packers joined the league in its second year, 1921. And when they did, they were thrown out.
Something had to be done. And the Packers were a convenient scapegoat.
1925, when Red Grange came out of the University of Illinois, that was major news.
And they signed him and basically wore him out those first couple years.
Advertise it, sell out a stadium, sell out a game, create a lot of revenue, and that's how the sport grew.
Teams like the New York Giants and the Chicago teams wouldn't come to Dayton because of the low draw.
Small towns were the blueprint for how to develop your team and to get players.
If you're from Portsmouth, it's sort of what could have been.
But all these towns, loved the game and they were willing to pay admission.
The Dayton Triangles, the Canton Bulldogs, the Massillon Tigers, the Columbus Panhandles, the Shelby Blues, the Akron Pros, the Oorang Indians, the Green Bay Packers, the Chicago Staleys, the Milwaukee Badgers, the Rochester Jeffersons, the Buffalo All-Americans, the Portsmouth Spartans, the Ironton Tanks.
Nobody said you had to see the ball. It was under the jersey. And everyone was so, oh my gosh, you can't do that. And they said, why not? There's no rule against it.
They were just on that cusp of greatness.
He was willing to stick by his own constitution.
It has really become a part of people's lives in this country.
These men, these teams, these towns, they are the inspiration and the foundation for the game of football.
Unique to see how it's progressed from those humble beginnings to what we see today. Everybody's gravitating to it as the best sport in the world.